And we're live, ladies and gentlemen. We are live. Welcome. Welcome to part 3 of the Reasonably Fine Art Talk, where the great Buddy O interviews little old me. How you doing, Buddy O?
I'm just great. I'm great. Hello, boys and girls. And we are with Charlie Hunter. What a privilege it's been these last couple of weeks to have him stop interviewing and start, just as he says, blathering. And we're going to get him to blather one more time, and that's today. So welcome, welcome. Charlie, how you doing today?
Never better. Never better.
Never better. Don't you love it? Don't you love it? Hey, we're going to jump right in here because why not? We're not even going to catch up on the last 2 weeks, but I do want to start. You know, you're supposed to kind of warm up to serious questions, but I want to, I can't help myself. So cats.
Yeah. I don't like cats. I just happen to have cats. I never wanted cats.
You can't tell me you don't like cats.
Oh, I can't stand them. They're awful. No, I never wanted cats. It's when I was working as a music manager at a closed, my office was in a closed down hardware store in Chesterfield, Massachusetts. And one day I heard mewing out in the parking lot. And I went out and there was this little tiny kitten that had gotten lost. I guess it was probably one of the barn cats from up the dairy farm up the road. And so I took it home, and ever since then I've had cats. Never wanted them.
Never wanted them.
No. No, I mean, you know, why do we love cats? We love cats because cats are totally dependent on us and are completely like, eh.
Yeah. Well, quickly tell us your 2 dogs and the cat go to heaven.
Oh! That's, everybody knows. They should know that joke.
Well, if they don't, they need to hear it.
Okay. Wow. Okay, this is a curveball. One day, St. Peter is off on vacation. He's taking a sick day. And so God is having to man the pearly gates. And out of the mist coming toward God are it's 2 dogs and a cat. And God is kind of unsure exactly what to do. And when the first dog gets up to him, the 3 animals sit down, and God says, well, come here. And the first dog comes up to him, and God says, why should you be in the kingdom of heaven? The dog says, well, I was a good boy. I was a very good boy. One time I saved this child from drowning. And God says, absolutely, come in by all means. Says the second dog, come to the podium, and says, why should you be in the kingdom of heaven? And the second dog says, I was a good boy. I tried to be. I really tried to be a good boy. When I would get on the couch, but when I was told to get off the couch, I would get off the couch most of the time. And God said, you're a good boy. You're a good boy. Come into the kingdom of heaven. And God gestures toward the cat, and the cat comes toward God, and the cat says, I believe you are sitting in my chair. So
maybe everyone knows the joke, but we love hearing you tell it.
It's a great joke. Corduroy even liked hearing it.
I heard that.
Extension cord. Stop chewing the extension cord, Corduroy.
So last we were together, you were with Young Hunter Management. You were a music manager, and you were really starting to paint in the 90s, right?
Yeah, I was getting sick of being a music manager, and in 2000, I moved back to Vermont because my parents were getting older, and I was planning on moving back. My dad died in '99, so I was a little late to be any use to him. But in 2000, I moved back, and my older brother lived at the family homestead, and my other brother is nearby. So the 3 of us were there for my mom for the last dozen years of her life, yeah. And that was great. And I gave up music management because it was not that I brilliantly understood that the entire industry was going to collapse, which it did with the advent of streaming. But I just was sick of it, and it was getting to be about money. So
yeah. But you had been painting all along, or pretty much all along, you had a friend who really encouraged you to do that?
Yeah, I started painting again somewhat seriously in the late 90s. And then when I moved back up to Vermont and was saying, okay, I am done with the management thing, I went out virtually every day for like 6 months and painted outdoors, not having any idea what I was doing. I was painting with acrylic a lot of the time, which is, unless you're Carla Bosch, is very, very difficult. Or Vlad Dushev. Yeah, I was painting a lot. I was transitioning into doing much more kind of event production up here. So I still wasn't deriving income from painting, but I started painting more and more and more. And in this studio where I am right now, this was the drawing studio for a art school, adult art classes that brought in outside painters, such as Stuart Shills from Philadelphia. And I was on the board of this art institute, and which was not long for this world. But I figured out, I finagled a position as water boy for these workshops, where I would be doing whatever was needed in exchange for getting to attend the workshops. And at the one with Stuart Shills in 2004, I was frustrated with how terribly my painting was going, and I mushed all my paints together, and it made this kind of monochromatic lizardy green color. And I painted with that, and at the end of the day, Shills said, I'm getting mewed at. Shills said, that seems to be working well for you. And I was off to the races.
Come on.
Yeah.
Wow. At that point, you moved over to your pretty trademark style as far as colors palette, right?
The early days of it. Yeah.
And were you still drawing, or were you trying big brushes, or what were you doing early like that? Other than
I was trying. It was big brushes. Yeah, and I had a storefront in Bellows Falls that was both. I would just find odds and ends and antiques I liked, and they were ostensibly for sale. But if I made my rent, I was very happy. And I used the rest of the space for my studio. And one day this couple came in, and I was working on, I remember I was trying to do a painting of the power transformers in Bellows Falls. And they came in and they said, oh, you're working in a tonalist style. You should, our names are Penelope and John, and we have Village Arts of Putney. And Dennis Sheehan does workshops about tonalism. You should take a Dennis Sheehan workshop. So I took a Dennis Sheehan workshop, and that was a revelation. I learned how to paint tonally.
What an amazing, all these little, only when we turn around and look, we see those, I don't know what lily pads were jumping from one to another, but this couple that came in and said you ought to do that, and you ended up in Putney, Vermont, taking a class. Yeah. And that launched you into tonalism.
I was always drawn to tonalism. Like, I loved Ennis. There's the Clark in Williamstown, Massachusetts, has an Ennis called I think it's Home at Montclair or something. And that to me is it always had moved me, because I used to go to that museum a lot when I lived down in Northampton. And since Sheehan is so derived from Ennis, it was just wonderful to learn how some of those effects were achieved. So that was great. And also, see, Village Arts of Putney is where the Putney Painters met. And one day at the end of a Dennis Sheehan painting day, they said, oh, you should stick around, because today is Richard's birthday. And I was like, oh, cool. And I had no idea who Richard was. but everyone seemed to be very impressed with Richard. And I hung around, and or else it was the next day. I guess it was the next day. They said it's going to be Richard's birthday, so you should come. And I'd been out painting that afternoon and came into the Village Arts of Putney, and Richard Schmid was sitting there holding court, and he turned and looked at me and said, "Who are you? You look like a painter," because I was covered in, in paint, as one becomes when one has been out painting all day. And we had a nice chat, and he invited me to join them for the next Putney Painters just as a guest to come paint with them. And behind me, right here, ladies and gentlemen, is the painting that got me into Putney Painters. They were all out. They were all out in the orchard, and they had a little girl dressed, one of Carol Arnold's children, who for years Carol Arnold's children were dressed in adorable outfits and posed in front of Putney Painters. And she was posed in the orchard, and everyone was painting her. And I don't paint cute little children in orchards. So I turned around, I painted the electrical service. This is the electrical service at the side of the barn, and some trees. And you can see how crude my painting style is here compared to how I paint today. But Richard thought that was he was so tickled that I painted that. He was like, I think he was really charmed that I wasn't trying to be an acolyte, And he said, "Oh, you've got to paint with us every week." Oh. And so I started painting with them every week. And after
what year was this?
That was 2010. 2010. Okay. Or 2008, 2009, that is in there. But it was in 2010 when he said, "Now you're formally invited to become a Putney painter." And I was scared of the branding, because we all have RS branded on our ass. But you just bite down on a piece of leather when they and it passes fairly quickly. But when Mark Boges was inducted, he cried like a baby. It's terrible.
Hey, Mark, if you're out there.
So, I've made that joke for years, and he hasn't talked to me for the last few years. I'm afraid he's maybe heard the joke.
Well, before we get too far along, so I don't know, maybe we've covered 10 years in the last 3 minutes, but so through all that, you must have, I shouldn't say it like that. Well, I already have. I mean, you must have had some really growing pains and struggles to get to a place to where that, it's not just all those beautiful lily pads we land on, but all of the, shark infested around. But I mean, you struggled to find were you frustrated, confused? Were you normal? Of course, but tell us a little bit about that before we go on to Putney.
Well, the period when I was trying to find my voice, as it were, I mean, I think it's universal for all of us that, it's like trying on different clothes, trying on, it's like when you're a college student, how people kind of adopt personas, for a little while, your friend who last week was, I don't know, a goth is all of a sudden dressing like a young Republican. It's okay, cool. And trying on these different styles of painting, it's actually it's the thing I am most sympathetic about when teaching a workshop, because I think virtually all of us who teach workshops feel frustrated with people just trying to paint like us, as opposed to trying to paint the way that they should be painting. But when you are trying to find your voice, painting the way someone else paints is actually very informative. It's very, very, it's crucial to the process to see if this way of expressing yourself, works great, if it feels true. So the amount of frustration I had I decided by the early 2000s that I really did want to paint. But, you know, by 2004, 2005, I had the rope to hold on to, that like working from kind of a very limited palette. That made sense to me. Working full chroma I never really felt like that was the right language for me to be telling the stories, you know. And when I teach again, I always make analogies between, you know, short story writing and painting, that you just find the language. You can write like Hemingway, or you can write like Willa Cather, you know. There's so many different ways to tell a story. And so that monochromatic or limited color language just made more sense to me than trying to tell all than trying to tell everything. Chroma is so adjectival. It's like cramming a short story with adjectives for me. But it took a long time to figure out what to include and what to leave out. And, you know, the squeegee showed up at some point. This was pre-squeegee. You know, I would have loved to have had a squeegee because these are very straight lines. But one day I was in the hardware store and saw Ettore squeegees. So I was like, that might be useful for painting. And I'd just been reading about Gerhard Richter, who uses squeegees very, very differently. But, you know, it was endless trial and experimentation and frustration. And, you know, it still is. I don't know what I'm doing out there, you know.
I wonder if people can hear that, because it's very true. Kathy says it just all the time.
Oh, yeah. Oh, well, you know, the great Greg LaRocque, you remember?
Oh, sure.
Wonderful, wonderful man who's no longer with us. There's going to be more and more of that. And I don't like it. I do not like the fact that people who I love and respect are going to be shuffling off this mortal coil. I mean, I'm immortal, but I've always assumed I was immortal, but the indices are not looking so good. But my control group is having issues. But anyway, one day I was painting with LaRocque, and all of a sudden he just threw all his paints in the back of his car. It was like, why do I even try to do this? I have no idea what I'm doing. You know, and we all have that. Patrick Lee, I remember painting with him one day, and he all of a sudden scraped out his painting and, like, with the back of a brush, dug into the remaining paint. Me paint so good. No, we all have days where it's like, I have no recollection of it.
But it's important to let yourself have that moment instead of thinking differently, like instead of shooting all over yourself, right? Just to go ahead and allow yourself to be in that place and allow yourself to say what you said about, I don't really know what I'm doing out there.
Absolutely. And that also, I mean, because people ask me right now, people are asking a lot about my encaustic work. I honestly do not remember how I got certain effects, you know, and you just have to keep doing it, and maybe it eventually gets, you know, drummed into one's skull. But I mean, that's one of the things I do not like about doing instructional videos, is that you're expected to just be able to perform. And unless it took me to my third video to feel comfortable with the process. Because what we did on the third video was I did a very simple painting that I had painted many times before, that is based on a drawing. And I made, you know, I showed how to use the squeegee to make different marks, how to manipulate edges. I mean, it was very instructional, as opposed to me trying to paint from life a painting. And it turns out that video producers, if you spend a day with a crew painting, they don't really care that it's not a very good painting, because they've invested a lot of money on having that crew shooting a lot of videotape and spending a lot of time setting up microphones. And there are a couple of tapes of me out there that I don't think are so We'll leave it there.
Okay. A little while ago, you reminded me. Tim Lawson said that the most dangerous place in the world for him is a hardware store. He's so serious about it too. He loves just the tactile nature of it all, instead of feeling like he's got to do it a certain way. That and so that's a real freeing thing to for, I think, a lot of us to hear you say that.
Mm-hmm.
So Putney, what is the Putney Painters done for you?
That's what I ask them all the time.
What do you do for me?
Yeah. That's not what the Putney Painters can do for you. That's what you can do for the Putney Painters. No, it opened, obviously it opened so many doors, especially in this realm of realist art that where I'm established, on the same circuit with Kathy and other artists like that. Because I don't paint exactly. I'm a little bit of an outlier in how I paint compared to most others in this genre. And having the stamp of approval from Richard made a huge difference. A huge difference.
Mm-hmm.
It opened so many doors. I have the luxury of being able to go into a gallery and say, I painted with Richard Schmid for 12 years, and people listen to that,
Yeah.
So
The
Mark Anderson says, "Howdy, fellas." Well, howdy, Mark.
You Wisconsin boy, you. How you doing, Mark? Good to see you.
They're all drunk in Wisconsin. Did you see that story?
I did.
What are they doing out there?
It's up there with Bill Size and all the crew, just drinking up a storm, I reckon. I lost my train of thought. You messed up with me. I write over here without looking at it.
Well, what doors? The last question is what doors? What did Putney Painters do for me?
Yeah, and what have you done for the Putney Painters?
What have I done for the Putney Painters? Not a whole hell of a lot, I don't think, buddy. This fall there was a Putney Painters Day down at the is it called the Institute or the Museum of Realist Art in New Salem, Massachusetts, and Nancy Guzik asked me to conduct the interview with the director there and stuff like that. So I mean, the Putney Painters is a wonderful community. I don't participate in that many of the painting events at present, just because I'm so busy with other stuff here. But this last weekend, they met, and I believe they're meeting tomorrow. Not tomorrow, this coming Saturday. And it's a very supportive group. Any small salon of people who enjoy painting together, so long as Richard was wonderful about keeping egos in check and making sure that everybody was as supportive as possible. And that was such a gift to have that as an example to live up to.
We were invited to come up and visit with them in September. It was absolutely delightful, and Kathy painted with them a couple of times, and I sat and had a portrait or two done, but they're uncanny in their welcomeness, their cheering on of folks wanting to paint. And this is the only plug I'll make over these 3 times. Kathy is teaching. They've invited her to teach at there in Putney in early September.
Early September of 2025. Be there, ladies and gentlemen. Be there. Kathy Odom is a wonderful teacher, and the Village Arts of Putney is a wonderful facility.
We cannot wait to return. It's just fabulous. You've been plein air painting in events. What was your first event?
First event I did, there was a short-lived event in North Bennington, Vermont. It was a very good event. It just didn't have good sales, which of course is the bugaboo for many of these events. And the first event that I did, I had just joined Putney Painters, and Lori Woodward said, "There's this whole circuit of plein air events," and Kathy Anderson was a veteran of Telluride, and she was like, "Oh yeah, they're great." And I saw there was this one in North Bennington, and they had an open quick paint, and so I went over and did a painting of a Victorian house, and I won the open quick paint. And I remember Hulai Chong turning to me and saying, "You're very good." Just in a slightly surprised tone. I just want to say here, Scott Jones, say hi, Scott. Putney Painters, smartest thing I did in Scottsdale was inviting the entire group to exhibit. And what that is that Scott was the director of Legacy Gallery, and invited in 2012, I think it was, invited the Putney Painters to do a group show there. So there were several either predominantly or several Richard paintings, but the rest of us had one or two paintings. That was a game changer for me, because that opened up teaching at Scottsdale Artist School. I ended up showing for a couple of years at a gallery in Scottsdale, not Legacy. But it just opened so many doors, the association with Putney Painters. And Scott is a wonderful human being, a wonderful supporter of this community. And
this industry wouldn't be the same without him, that's for sure.
Nope.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you for doing that. And Putney Painters benefited greatly, not just Charlie and Kathy, but all of them. They were talking about that when we were up there in September with them. So you are you still in painting in events? I know you judge some events. You're teaching. Tell us what your art world is like now.
Certainly. Well, I want to touch on Corduroy. Life is not so bad. Corduroy doesn't think I should be doing this. I wanted to touch on, in 2004, it was when I first started having stiffness on my right side. And so, and that eventually was diagnosed as a type of MS. I don't tend to dwell on that very much, just because, at this point in life, everybody's got something. But what it does allow me to do is play the GIMP card at painting events, which makes it very nice, because I don't have to like lug my easel across fields. I just paint out of the back of my car, and everybody's perfectly nice about it. But I still enjoy doing the plein air events. I'm doing fewer of them. I am trying to judge more, because I think that's a nice service. Once you get established to a certain degree, you got to step out of the way and let somebody else have a shot, and so I enjoy doing a couple of events a year. Judging is challenging. Jurying is worse. Jurying is traumatic, because that means people who everybody knows with judging that it's essentially random. It's what you had for breakfast versus what you would have for breakfast the next day. It's going to influence. The idea of the best painting is such a arbitrary thing, but jurying is choosing who is going to get into an event and who's not, and that is awful. Yeah. So I think it's important to do. Somebody's got to do it. So put in your time. It's like I was a village trustee of Bellows Falls, Vermont for 2 years, from 2012 to 2014. Boy, I hated it, but I did it. I think civic engagement is important.
Take a few minutes to talk about Bellows Falls. How did you land in Bellows Falls? And Kathy and I've been there. It's not giant, but no. You have embraced everything about this small town. Tell us about Bellows Falls.
Well, again, I think it's important if you have advantages, you need to give back. I think that's important. I just think it's important. And in small towns like these, you need an engaged citizenry. I was in Northampton, Mass, which is 30,000 or 40,000 people. And that had a very established arts community. And I figured I could either expend a lot of energy trying to get accepted into that arts community, or I could go someplace where developing an arts community could be advantageous to that town, And so Bellows Falls is 20 miles from where I grew up. And I'd always liked its small town industrial architecture. And so I settled there in 2000 because it was 20 miles from home. So it was near home, but not too near home. It had been looked down upon by the surrounding towns because it was the poor town. So therefore it has better architecture because poverty preserves, and people who just want to impress one another don't tend to move there. It tends to be, it's kind of like living in the set of Northern Exposure, if you ever saw that show.
Yeah.
And we can go a little long today.
Okay, good.
Long, buddy. So
good. And you're teaching still?
I teach very seldom. I teach this year. I did a couple of one-day workshops attached to shows. Corduroy, we are going to have more lap time soon.
You're in my seat. You're in my seat.
Exactly. I'm in her space. But I do a couple of one-day workshops attached to shows. So I like doing workshops in places where I'm not particularly well known, because that's a good way to introduce yourself to that art community and kind of, just raise one's profile a bit. I do enjoy doing juried workshops, because the problem with open workshops is that you can say intermediate to advanced painters, but people have their own opinions about what constitutes intermediate or advanced. And so if we jury it, we can get pretty much everybody being on somewhat the same level, the same amount of seriousness of pursuit. And I'm doing one with Larry Moore and Doug Fryer and Shannon Runquist in Charleston, South Carolina, a place I've never been to, which I'm looking forward to. Mm-hmm. And then Doug and I will do another one either here or in Spring City, Utah next year. I'm also applying for a couple of residencies at art institutes, because being so civically engaged, it cuts down on the amount of time that one actually has to paint. Yeah. And so she's not hungry, RD. RD says Corduroy sounds hungry. She's not hungry. She has food over there. She's just annoyed. So anyway, and then I curated a show of photographs by my friend Susan McCullough at the Brattleboro Museum this year. So it's just kind of expanding out my vocabulary.
And you're in a number of galleries.
I'm in a number of galleries. The number varies. I have 2 solo shows next year. I have a solo show in Santa Fe and then one in Northampton.
Where was that one?
Northampton, Mass. So at William Basic Gallery. I'm very lucky to have a bunch of galleries that I really enjoy working with and really like the people who run them. Chris McClary out in Santa Fe, Will Basic in Northampton, Lindsay McCann at Old Main in Bozeman, Jane Meyer at Loom. You know, it's a nice community of people.
For your marketing nugget that you would say to folks if you want to be more move toward being a full-time artist, your number one nugget, I imagine from last week's, your number one nugget for painting would be draw, draw, and draw.
Right.
For the advancement, for the recognition, for the marketing, if you will, what's your number one nugget?
I took it from Laurie McNee. Wear a recognizable outfit. This buffalo plaid shirt has done me well. But that's be true to yourself. Paint. I think you can develop a career painting what the market wants, but I don't think it's going to be terribly fulfilling. Oh, okay, Corduroy, hang on. Hang on. We have someone who's insisting on climbing up. Hang on.
It's the last week, Corduroy. We know you want some streaming time here.
Yeah. All right. All right. We have a little bit of Corduroy visible. So anyway, continue.
Well, you were giving us your nugget for
just don't try to paint what you think the market wants, because if you get successful, then you'll hate what you do. You know.
And so, because you painted a power line instead of a little girl wearing lace, I mean, really, that's you were alive painting that piece over your right shoulder there.
Yeah.
And that's done that for you.
Yep. Exactly.
This is a generous man, boys and girls. I'm really taken by your desire to move toward a place. Who's HS? Yes, she won. Corduroy wins again. I'm taken by Charlie, who moves toward a place that where it's they have less than. And you're such a generous man, Charlie. We could talk about a couple more things before we're gone. And again, boys and girls, Charlie and I didn't talk about what we're going to do in advance, but I do have James Lipton from inside the Actors Studio. You remember that show? Did you ever see that? He had 8 questions he would ask all the same guests.
All right.
And so I'm going to ask you these 8 short questions, and we're going to get a little insight to Charlie. Charlie Hunter, what's your favorite word?
Whoa.
I know.
All right. Okay. I got to get into that part of my brain. Favorite word. Indefatigable.
Thank you. What's your least favorite word?
Ooh. Oh, there's so many. Pustule.
Thank you. Third question, what turns you on?
What turns me on is intelligence and commitment.
Thank you. What turns you off?
Pretension.
Question 5, what's your favorite curse word?
Motherfucking son of a bitch.
Is that hyphenate? That's another question.
That's one word.
What's the noise you love most?
The sound of a train. The sound of a train in the rain.
What's the noise you hate?
Sound of a leaf blower. Everybody hates the leaf blower.
Nice, very nice, very nice. What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
With any chance of success, or
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
No.
Profession other than my own that I would like to attempt. Oh, why not? Why not becoming an Iron Chef?
What profession other than your own would you not like to attempt?
Anything in the medical field. The human body is grotesque. The human body, when it's in distress, is challenging to look at.
And the last question, James Lipton would always ask his guests: if heaven exists, what would you like to hear the great mystery? He didn't say great mystery, he said God. But I know that my friend Charlie Hunter loves the phrase great mystery, and I love that. If heaven exists, what would you like to hear the great mystery say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Oh, what every human being wants to hear, which is, you did a good job. Come on in. You did good. I mean, no, this is one of the things that I think is important to remember. And Betty Sue and I talk about this a lot. And there's another, that is a huge blessing in my life, is having Betty Sue in my life. You know, just having someone who you know fundamentally has your back. But we talk about, since she's a musician, and you know, I paint in public, people come up and start talking to you, and really what they want is just to know that it's all right, that they're all right. And we are given this little bit of grace to be nice to people, you know, to be the hand of God saying, you're doing a good job, you know.
Beautiful. Thank you.
I can also be a real jerk. I must admit, you know.
Kathy told the other day, she says, you're an asshole. And of course, no one would imagine Kathy saying that, but behind closed doors with me, she does. And she says, and I said, whoa, I'm not an asshole. I'm acting like one. But
exactly.
I am not, but I certainly can do that. What are you looking forward to?
Right now, I'm looking forward to the fact that on December 28th, Betty Sue and I are meeting up in Toronto, and we are going to take the Canadian Via Rail's vintage streamliner from Toronto to Saskatoon. And we're going to be in Saskatoon New Year's Eve, because who doesn't want to be in Saskatoon New Year's Eve? And then the next day we get on Via Rail train number 2, the Canadian, heading east back to Toronto. So we're going out to Saskatoon and back just for the hell of it on the train. Oh
gosh! Well, sometime next year, let's do this again. But I want you and Betty Sue, not spelled S-U-E. We want but you and Betty Sue together. We'd love to do. Let me do that again, would you?
Sure, that would be great fun.
It's good. Boys and girls, we got any other questions in the chat box or anything? Because I'm just I'm full of love right now. Nat, hey, cousin.
Dar Williams told us about 30 years ago, Charlie loves crumbling infrastructure. He has been true to himself. That's true. And HS says, thanks, buddy Odom. Great interview. Hope we get to see Kathy on the RFAT chat circuit someday. We've had Kathy once. Mm-hmm. You can look it up, HS. She's on the, if you go over to YouTube, you can find the Kathy Odom interview there.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you, Charlie Hunter. My goodness. Have a great holiday and have a great rail. Tell me about that. Have you done that rail before?
Many times.
Of course you have. Wow.
A little bit. I'm a little bit spectrumy about trains.
What?
I'm a little bit spectrumy about trains. I do like a train trip now and again.
I think you do.
All right. Thank you, buddy-o. Thank you all, ladies and gentlemen.
Ladies and Charlie Hunter, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Way to go, Charlie. It's great to know you.
Thank you so much, buddy. This was great fun. Thank you all. And we'll see you. I think we'll see you next week for another Reasonably Fine Art Talk. Bye-bye.